It's like you have to have eyes here and here at the same time. And like, it's crazy.
Worldwide, baby.
How did the judging of dance battles in the breaking world evolve to what it is today?
3, 2, 1, judges.
Before, it was just pointing left or right. It sounds like super basic, but if you're a good judge, it's more than just left and right. In your head, you're scoring round for round. It can be really tough to judge if you're not a great breaker yourself and been through the fire. There's differences in opinion for sure, but at the end of the day, you're never going to kill the subjectiveness in breaking. In MMA, in boxing, they have judges, but sometimes they don't even need the judges because somebody gets knocked out. We don't have that. It's always going to go to the judges. Always. That's why we call it the hot seat. Now, it's broken down into categories. When I judge for Olympic qualifier events, we always have an iPad with 5 categories, and that's technique, musicality, originality, vocabulary, and execution. So we're looking for all of these things, and we have a meter for each element to where we score in each category. So if I see like, oh, this person is really killing the music right now, I'm messing with the music bar.
So you're adjusting your score during the round so that those sliders land in the positions that they're going to be recorded in, basically. It's about the final position that matters.
Yep, and then when you're ready, submit. That's done. On to the next round. It's quick. People are moving fast. It's not like boxing. When you end a round, they sit and get a minute's rest. That doesn't happen. So as soon as a round's over, boom, the guy's already going back in or the girl's already going back in. You have to know your score before that second round really starts. And then you have to watch. You can't just be like down on your iPad because then you're going to miss something. There's different strikes, a level 1, level 2, level 3. If you're on level 3, then that's automatic disqualification. So it can be very detailed, and just another thing for the judges to look at. All the general public sees is who won the round or not. Looking at a battle is enough information already. So you have like usually a red side and a blue side. So on a big screen behind where all the crowd can see, the blue box will pop up for the blue side if the blue side won that round, or the red. A lot of times the general public, they'll boo some decisions because they think what's good is just the spins, you know, or the dynamic movements. They're not paying attention to any of the other categories like creativity, musicality. They just kind of look for the blow-ups, so to speak, and they think that person always wins. It's not like that.
So I want to talk about these axes and what do each one of these things really mean in practice?
Vocabulary is variety of moves, of styles, of flows, of transitions. Do you have footwork? Do you have power moves? Do you have threads? Do you have freezes? Do you have stacking, sweeps, back rocks? There's all these elements in breaking, you know, that we're looking for. So many, because breaking is always evolving. We're open and we're free to create and to add on. Variety is all of that. Technique is athleticism. It's body control. It's in the same family as execution, but then there's more to execution also. How you perform the move. Did you crash? Did you mess up? Did you fall? Originality is creativity. Who are you? Right? We should be able to go behind a backdrop and dance and people will be like, oh, that's Crumbs. They'll know right away, because I have my own style. So creativity, originality is huge. Being spontaneous, not knowing what the next move is, but it just happens with the flow and with the music, which leads into musicality. So all these things are all interwoven and connected. And once you get to the highest levels in breaking, you see that in one individual. They'll be able to take all those elements and just connect them in a unique way.
Yo, what the fuck is good, everybody? Welcome back to another Ghost video. Today we are going to be talking about beatbox categories, multiple topics related to this one. So we're going to talk about the origins of beatbox categories, then we're going to talk about Why musicality is the worst word in the English language. I'm not kidding. It's fucking worse than super taster, worse than gastropub. I wish this word was just fucking banned from the English language in every language. Like, there is no musicality in bossing say. Like, please just fucking ban this word. It's fucking terrible. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about how categories should be scored. In judging in like my personal opinion, and we're gonna go a little bit into each with like different anecdotes. So yeah, just a personal story. I'm not a breaker. This whole thing with me looking into it started by talking to a friend who is a breaker who also watches beatbox battles. We ended up comparing categories in both respective battles, and that's when I realized, wow, beatbox categories are pretty similar to breaking battle categories. So I looked more into it, and that's where I found the video in the beginning. I like how there's also that like misbehavior button at the corner, so you could eliminate someone if they have too much misbehavior. Like, oh, here's my punch snare. Like imagine doing that in a battle. Yeah, that person should probably be disqualified, because I don't think it should count if you punch their jaw and they can't beatbox anymore. You know, shout out Jayton in 2015 World Champs. I'm sorry that happened to you, man. If you don't know that story, he got like punched in the jaw, and then that fucked up both his tags elimination and his solo elimination, both of which I think he could have done really well in. So that really sucks. That was kind of like one of those butterfly effect things. Don't get into a bar fight right before a beatbox battle. That's my personal advice. But yeah, as you saw from the video, a lot of the beatbox categories we use today are directly transitioned over from older forms of hip hop battles. So breaking seems to be the primary ones. There's the TVEOM system, very different from the Trivium system that was used for the Olympics to get breaking into the Olympics in the first place, you know, with the infamous ray gun performance from Australia. That's my 15th seed or whatever the fuck. But yeah, it's different from that, which is a three-way system. The TVEOM system is the more traditional system, from what I know, the 5-category system of technique, which can be translated to technicality, vocabulary, which basically means variety, which oftentimes actually beatboxing does not have that as a separate category. Execution, which is in Maddox's pace system, originality, and then musicality. Once again, the worst word in the language. I'll explain why. And even if you look at other hip hop battles, there's DJing, which has a composition focus, right? There's scratching, which has a technicality focus. Oftentimes technicality is a category there. And then you look at battle rap as well, which has originality as a big focus as one of the categories. And then there are other categories that are pretty similar to the ones mentioned before. And if you look at the Red Bull websites, there's also other categories mentioned for breaking. So even within these older form of hip hop battles, there's oftentimes sort of like extra categories that are not always there, just sometimes, and that's pretty similar to beatboxing as well. So if we look at beatboxing, there's the usual categories that are there are technicality, musicality, originality, showmanship, also known as stage presence. Sometimes mic technique is added in there as well, sort of as like a within showmanship itself. And then the last one is like weirdly debatable. For some reason, no one can agree on the last one. Everyone does a different thing. Like I've seen score sheets that have originality and creativity separated, which makes no sense to me. I've also seen some score sheets that have flow and transitions and musicality separated. That makes no sense. You know, there's also sound design, which is a big element of beatboxing, and Vocoder proposes that as that should be one of the categories, because that's extremely important to beatboxing, especially the innovation of it. I think that's a good point. Sometimes it's execution. I think that's also a good category. And then sometimes there's also cleanliness / basics. Sometimes also called clarity in that case. And I think out of all of these, I think clarity and execution are the ones that work the best. I'm personally leaning towards clarity, because I think that often describes what people want to see in beatbox battles, what often makes people win. And it's just an important part of beatboxing. Like when you look at beatbox comments and beatbox feedback, people will often say, oh, that beatbox is really clean. I really like listening to that beatboxer, right? So I think that's probably the best one, but once again, every score sheet does it differently for some reason. There's no established 5th category. It's different per region or even per competition for some reason. Something else that's worth mentioning is that there is no vocabulary equivalent in the beatbox categories that are often used, right? Like for some reason, like there's no variety category, no vocabulary category, which is very interesting because repetition is one of those things that is like the most negatively reinforced things in beatbox battles. Like we always point out when someone's repetitive, even Inertia has a whole routine where he says, they say, I am repetitive, which is pretty meme-tastic lyrics, but that goes to show how much attention we pay to it, that Inertia would make a whole routine around it. And I think it's interesting that it's such an important facet of beatboxing and it's not integrated within like the traditional categories that we often see. Now, you can obviously shoehorn it into other categories like, oh, it might be worse technicality because they're not showing a greater variety of techniques, or it might be less originality because they're always relying on a few ideas, not as many diverse ideas, right? But if you're doing that, you're shoehorning the category, right? And it doesn't really stand on its own two legs, so it doesn't really properly reflect how important that facet of beatboxing is if you decide to just shoehorn it within other categories, right? That doesn't really make sense. It creates a lot of overlap. And something else that I want to mention, if you were active on Maddox's channel a while ago, he proposed this system called PACE, which is performance, arrangement, complexity, and execution, which I think is a good system just because it doesn't have musicality in it. Once again, it doesn't reflect everything. Like obviously, like there's no variety category, there's no like sound design category. Obviously you could put those within PACE itself, but then once again, you're kind of overlapping it. But some competitions did use the PACE category, especially some online competitions. I think it generally works better than the 5 traditional categories just because it doesn't have the word musicality. Okay, so let me talk about why musicality is the worst word in the English language. So there's different types of art, right? There's athletic arts. So for example, athletic arts would be like gymnastics. If you go to a circus performance, there's like, trapeze artists and stuff like that. It's very amazing to watch them perform athletic maneuvers, right? There's illustrative arts. You are impressed by the way someone draws. You are impressed by the way someone paints a painting. These are illustrative arts. You're creating an illustration. And then there's musical arts. You're playing an instrument. You're in a band. You're producing a track. You're layering different musical tracks on top of each other, right? So there's all of these different types of arts, different categories. And when musicality was created, it was created for something that was arguably an athletic art. I would consider breaking to be an athletic art, even though it has elements of the other art form categories that I mentioned before, right? So musicality as defined in breaking is how well you're adapting to the DJ and whatever tracks they're playing. So it does not mean like how musical you are or how well you create music. It means how well you're adapting to the music that is being played, how well you're adapting to the environment with your athleticism, right? When you transfer over the word musicality to beatboxing, that's when it starts to make no sense. The original definition does not apply anymore. And beatboxing, I think most of us would agree that it is primarily a musical art. Yes, there's athletic elements to it, there's other elements to it, but it's primarily a musical art. We often say beatbox is music. So how do you judge musicality and beatboxing when beatbox is music? That's like saying like, I'm gonna judge beatboxing based on its beatboxing. That like do you see where the definition just starts to fall apart? And that's why I think we've seen so much interpersonal conflict just around the definition of musicality. There are so many arguments, so many frustrations, so many confrontations just around musicality itself. Like I remember that controversial tweet Wing made. I'm gonna be paraphrasing, I don't remember the exact wording, but it was like, if your technicality is not properly integrated into the musical intentions of your piece, that is not real technicality. He put something like that on Instagram and got a lot of flack. And then later on, Wing made a really good video about his GPP Judge wildcard reviewing. I think this was a really great video where he clarifies more on his definition of musicality. That was the musicality definition that he proposed. There was also the infamous controversy around Helium critiquing the musical elements of D-Lo's GBB wildcard, which got a lot of backlash. I think it was on a live stream. And then he started saying things like, guys, I've been working in music forever. I know what real musicality is. And then he made like this like 20 paragraph thing. It looked like he really had to get something off of his chest, just like this crash out, defining what musicality is, his personal journey with musicality. It was like 20 paragraphs. It was crazy. There's also Rozelle with genre discriminating, and there's also a lot of people who say like technical beatboxers are not creating musicality, which doesn't make any sense, because like, so if I do like a skill demonstration with a trombone or a tuba, does that not count as music? Like, that just makes no sense. But yeah, just this word alone creates so many arguments, and I think like, you know, it's very natural based on how the original definition does not fit, and how everyone has a different definition of musicality, and also their own personal cultural upbringings, community upbringings, individual preferences, that everyone's gonna have an argument around the word musicality. So I genuinely think this is like an entire concept of beatboxing that we need to like rethink the semantics of, because it just does not work. So lastly, judging methodology. What is the best way to judge, especially with categories in mind? In my opinion, with categories and percentages, it actually makes the judging process much less natural and worse most of the time. I think really the only time it works is as training wheels. Like if there's a newer, less experienced judge who maybe is judging for the first time, needs reminders of what the facets of beatboxing are that they need to judge on, I think it works there. But generally, I think it gets in the way of good judges. Just let good judges do their job. And I think, you know, forcing them to abide by these like prescriptive judge categories with percentages assigned to them really diverts their attention, breaks their focus, and shifts them from how they would normally judge, you know, by applying these walls that they don't normally have to think about, right? And that's not even getting into the whole like reductive argument of, oh, technicality is worth 20%, originality is worth 20%, musicality is worth 20%. When you split the percentages like that, it's a very reductive way of looking at the different parts of beatboxing. I don't even think we've had a discussion around like how much each facet of beatboxing is worth percentage-wise. And I don't even know if we should have that discussion. That seems overly like ivory tower and creates a huge debate that can never be resolved. And for that reason, I feel like categories shouldn't get percentages. They should just be used as guidelines of like, these are the different things we look at in beatboxing as sort of like reminders. And then judges should just judge from there without having to like say like, oh, you get 8 points in this category, you get 9 points in that category. I think that makes the process very unnatural, and makes them score in ways that they normally wouldn't score. Especially because sometimes if you look at eliminations or wildcards, sometimes the best performance is not balanced across categories, right? Sometimes the best performance of that specific competition is a very technical performance, or sometimes it's a very musical performance. Sometimes it's a very energetic showmanship-based performance, right? And if you apply categories, it doesn't really capture those opinions as well. So with that being said, how should we actually judge these competitions? There is also the method used by Beatbox House, from what I've seen, where they just score out of 100. In my opinion, that doesn't really work. If you've seen my How to Rig Beatbox Battles tutorial, where you could just like shift the numbers to make your scores count more than other judges or less than other judges, I think that really opens up that whole can of worms, right? Like I think it's been long enough that I can tell this story. There was a Beatbox House party that I judged in 2019, I think. And there were 8 eliminations. We judged them all out of 100. And then Kenny Urban gave Devin Gwynn 100 out of 100. So that brought his seating really high, and that really changed the bracket as a whole, right? That like brought his seating super high. So in my opinion, the best way to judge competitions is just rank them in order. Like if there's 32 eliminations and you know, you have someone at first, the person in first should get 32 points, the person in second should get 31 points, and so forth, and you just add everyone's scores together. And that is how I think elims and wildcards should be judged, because one, it makes it so that all the distance between the competitors is equal, so that there's no like arbitrary like spaces or things like that. Maybe that's a bad thing, like if you want to really reflect how much like the 16th best beatboxer is better than the 17th best beatboxer, right? But overall, it doesn't really change the order in the end as long as the judges stay consistent with their scoring. The second thing is that it removes the possibility of you rigging the numbers so that you can count more or less than other judges' scores, right? All the scores are equal with the system. And third is the most simple. Like if you've seen a lot of competitions, you will see that if there are categories, judges will spend time just like rushing through the categories, scoring them, assigning numbers that are basically arbitrary at that point. If they're scoring in order, that's the quickest way to do it, so it doesn't get in the way of the logistics of judging or like take too much time or, you know, cause too much like stressful thinking for the judges, right? It's like the least frustrating process. And you know, it avoids having like these prescriptive categories as well. As I mentioned before, I have a personal story. One time I was putting out a wild card for Founders in American Champs 2022. Elise was live streaming his scoring, and in this specific scoring, the category for flow was separate from musicality. So there was like a thing for flow and musicality, and I had some timing mistakes in my wild card. And then I saw Elise going through my wild card, and he's like, you know, this timing mistake, it counts for musicality. So he scores musicality down. Then it counts for flow because it kind of breaks flow. So he scored flow down. And timing is also a technicality mistake. So he scored technicality down. And he literally scored like pretty much every category down because I made like some timing mistakes in a house part. And it made me want to like bang my head against the table just like watching this. Now, maybe I deserve those points off, like all those points off, because timing mistakes are important, obviously. But just like watching that process, how like these timing mistakes were like applied to like 4 different categories, it actually made me want to bang my head against the wall watching that. But yeah, that was just an aside. That's all for now. And yeah, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. I kind of just wanted to make this video to cover multiple topics. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time when I'm back from Asia.